Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for practice owners and leaders, where we are obsessed with how to build a successful practice and get a life too. Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and we're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. Today, we're talking about the multiplying power of distributed leadership. Let's get into it. One of my clients was not having a good day and told me about it in one of our calls. He had told everyone exactly what to do at the beginning of the day, and yet some team members didn't seem to be engaged. Others were doing only what they'd been told and nothing more. And with a few others, he frankly had no idea what they were doing. He always felt torn between doing what he loved, helping patients, and having to run the practice. And he was saying there has to be a better way. The problem was that the doctor had been doing exactly what he had learned from countless business articles on how to manage a business. But it was just making him tired. In short, he had been taught to manage when what he should have been doing is leading. Two very different things. In my second book and my third book, I talk about managers being the core business disease of modern dentistry. Managers, the way we know them in business today, were invented in the factory system of the industrial age. The assumption was that workers would always work better if someone was standing over them, telling them what to do. Or even worse, they're not smart enough to figure things out without a manager. But managers are the core business disease of the industrial age. And although we supposedly left all that behind in the 1970s, almost every practice today still reflects the tired, ineffective top-down hierarchy of management that has worn this doctor down. Leaders have been around since man lived in hunter-gatherer groups, but management is a very new and very different thing. Managers have become a sacred cow that have only been around for a little over a century, and they should go away, in my opinion, as quickly as possible. Few things are as disruptive, unhelpful, and unproductive in the workplace as managers. Every office manager should be turned into an office leader, no exceptions. We'll talk more about how to do that in another podcast. Today, I just need you to understand why. In the case of my doctor friend and client, he was only doing what he had learned, but it wasn't helpful. The manager's worst habits are to solve things and decide things. No other actions are as debilitating as solving and deciding things for others. When a manager solves and decides, the only thing left is to delegate tasks to be executed. Do this or do that at this rate. But when we delegate tasks, people feel used. More on that later. In order to understand why managers are such a bad idea, we actually have to go back to a very fundamental question: what makes us human? Beyond awareness, what really makes us human? I believe it is the ability to be creative, and as a result, to imagine something other than what is, and then choose to move in that new direction. Michelangelo saw a block of marble in the yard of the Cathedral of Florence, and we're told he walked around it until he understood what was in there, chipped away everything that wasn't that, and the masterpiece we know as David emerged. We do the same thing on the way to work, wondering which way will beat the traffic today, then moving in that direction, and our route emerges. An accountant does this with numbers, and a welder does it with steel. All of these activities, from carving the David to welding a staircase, share one common activity born out of our creative nature: the desire and the ability to make decisions. Creativity at its core is nothing more than a series of decisions, and beyond awareness, being human is best expressed by being allowed and required to make decisions, to confront and solve problems. If that is true, then managers who solve and decide things are fundamental in the dehumanizing of the workplace, because tasks are for machines. We'll talk more about this later, but when you delegate responsibilities, people take ownership. When you delegate tasks, people feel used because there's no solving and deciding in the process. Leaders do it differently. Leaders humanize. And the way they humanize is they teach people to make decisions. They train others to solve and decide, and then they get the heck out of the way. If you're becoming less and less important in your position, you're actually leading. To help us see the difference between management and leadership, let's look at a definition of both that we and many others feel describe two very different ways to relate to our team members. Here's our definition of a leader, who arises organically, by the way, because of the impact they are having in the lives of people. Leadership is any act that improves the life, situation, or performance of another individual. Let me say that again. Leadership is any act that improves the life, situation, or performance of another individual. With that definition, everybody can be and everyone should be a leader. Contrast that with our definition of a manager who is always appointed, they don't arise organically, and a manager is not focused on the people but on the process. Management is the use of power and authority to command and control for the benefit of the manager. The use of power and authority to command and control for the benefit of the manager. You can see by this definition, nobody needs to be managed, but everyone benefits from great comprehensive leadership by everybody in the practice. I've got a great cartoon that shows a manager poking his head into a staff person's cubicle with the caption something like, "Don't forget, I need to take credit for your report by 3:30. And I regularly tweet out, when I talk to a manager, I get the sense they are important. When I talk to a leader, I get the sense that I'm important. Leadership and management are two very different things, and they have very different history and very different roots. So another way to see this vast difference is to trace those historical roots. Leadership is much harder to trace, by the way, than management, largely because true leadership is an organic thing that arises when people decide they want someone else to impact their life situation or performance. Management, however, is very traceable and to very different origins, and all of these instances are directly related to people with power and authority subjugating others with little or no input from those other people. So leadership arises organically throughout history, starting with obvious things like human awareness, the search for meaning, later with the rise of democracy and other social, political, and technological shifts that all make it easier for leaders to arise without regard to someone's position in a hierarchy or their birth situation. The first written mentions of management, however, are of people in the writings of Hammurabi's code 2,000 years ago who are dealing with slaves. We see it carried through middle-aged serfdom into the professional military, from which the first international merchants borrowed hierarchy. When the factories arose, they just kept going with the same military management model. Leadership comes from awareness, meaning, creativity, democracy, enlightenment, pluralization, and technology. And management comes from slavery through serfdom, through the military, through mercantilism, into industrialism, and on into human resources today. So we need to simply stop managing people and rehumanize the workplace by giving everybody their brain back. We need to begin to allow and require that everyone make localized decisions. And the best way to do that is to stop managing and start leading. The best business leaders make few decisions. The art of traditional management involves planning, organizing, staffing, controlling, and awful assumptions like manipulating human capital. In the management model, people are capital to be manipulated and controlled just like chairs. In contrast, the art of leadership is to know how few decisions the leader needs to make. Let me say that again. The art of leadership is to know how few decisions the leader needs to make, not how many. Ricardo Semler owns an estimated $1 billion private company called Semco, and he hasn't made a decision for more than 20 plus years. Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter and CEO of Square and Twitter, says, "When I am making decisions, I am not leading." He calls it a failure of leadership when he makes decisions. Both of these are great examples of tremendous leadership because they've trained other people to solve and decide, and then they got out of the way. And again, it works because these guys have trained others to solve problems and make decisions. Having gotten out of the way, the leaders are now free to do the things that leaders should do. Ask questions, review things, assess, think about the future. If you're making decisions for others, you're managing. If you're just asking questions, you're leading. Here's a shorthand explanation of the difference that you should memorize. Managers tell, leaders ask. You'll hear that a number of times from me. Managers make decisions and then just tell people what to do. Leaders agree on a result, then ask good questions to make sure others are making good decisions. Then they get out of the way because leaders focus on results. Managers focus on the process, so they never get out of the way. Agree together on the result, then allow and require others to figure out the process. Erica Pusillo, the practice leader at Craig Spodak's 55-person single-location dental facility in Delray Beach, Florida, is one of the best leaders I know. She's amazing at applying the simple principle of asking versus telling. And as a result, this practice has 55 people who are all fully engaged, self-managed adult stakeholders living in a network of teams released to take action locally. It's really fun to watch Erica operate and a joy to see Spodak Dental Group team members in action become fully human together. So what are you delegating, tasks or responsibilities? We said earlier that when managers delegate tasks, people feel used because tasks are for machines and require no thinking. But leaders delegate responsibility. Get a great result. a much broader thing that requires thinking, solving, and deciding. When given responsibility, people take ownership, and ownership is the most powerful motivator in business. Are you delegating tasks that simply require action, or responsibility, which requires the whole messy, creative person to show up? So management is not leadership. Management is a very recently invented construct, but leadership has been around for centuries. We've conflated the two to the point where we don't even know the difference anymore. But let me tell you what management is. Management is nothing more and nothing less than pure, unadulterated codependence. I'm looking for someone to tell what to do. Well, that's convenient because I'm looking for someone to tell me what to do, and I'll sit and wait passively until you give me a command. That may work for 7-year-olds, but there's nothing healthy about that kind of relationship between two adults. If we called management what it is, codependence, we'd do a lot less of it. So here's a simple reference for pulling them back apart. Manage stuff, lead people. You'll hear that a number of times as well. To get this right, we need to separate people from resources. Human resource is a terrible description of people. Human capital, all these things we say about people turns them into stuff. And stuff needs to be managed, but people don't. They need to be led. And when people are extensions of machines, they are stuff to be managed. But if they are fully human, they require leadership, not management. In our company, we only manage stuff: paper, numbers, software, processes, systems, delivery of goods and services, accounting, marketing, sales. These are all things. They're all stuff to be managed. And everyone in the business manages stuff. We all manage stuff. But we don't need someone with the title of manager to hover over any of us as people to ensure this stuff will get managed. People manage the stuff, and we lead the people by vision, guidance, training, and support, and then most importantly, by getting the heck out of the way and allowing and requiring decisions to be made locally. The manager's quest is to be as helpful as possible for as long as possible. That's what we taught them. The leader's quest is to relentlessly train others to solve and decide so that the manager becomes a leader and the leader becomes less important every day. That is so counter-logical to what we've been taught. But we give people more money when they become less important every day. That means they're getting to the point where they can now do things that are leadership level activities, creating guidance, vision, training, support, thinking about where we should go next, asking good questions. It's important enough to say twice, the art of leadership is to know how few decisions the leader needs to make. So people are not stuff. Manage stuff, lead people. I've got a short list of the compelling differences between leadership and management I'd like to work through very quickly. It should help us understand why management is so destructive to a participation age practice. Managers tell, number one, managers tell, leaders ask. We've talked about that. Number two, managers solve and decide. Leaders train and delegate, and then get the heck out of the way. Managers delegate tasks, which makes people feel used. Put this nut on that bolt. Leaders give responsibility, which creates ownership. Make a great washing machine. Don't put a nut on a bolt. Make a great washing machine. When you give people responsibility, they start thinking at a different level. Responsibility creates ownership, and ownership is the most powerful motivator in business. Managers manage by policies. Leaders lead by principles. You can see people being dragged to the bottom by policy after policy after policy, which turns really smart people into stupid people because they're managing at the bottom. Leaders lead by principles. They drag everybody to the top, which is why it is so important to have your values, your vision, and your mission outlined and in writing and using it every day to run your practice. Another thing that differentiates the two, managers focus on process. Do it this way. Leaders focus on result. Get me the result. If you get me this result, I don't care how you do it, as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical. That doesn't mean the process isn't important. You should see our business. It's full of process. The difference is, where did the process come from? We agree together on the result, and then I ask those people who are getting that result to design the process. They come up with the process. They use their brains to solve and decide and figure that out so that they can get the result we need. Lastly, managers rely on authority. Command and control, power and authority, because I told you so. Leaders rely on influence and expertise. They lead because people are following. Leaders have followers. Managers have titles. So stop managing, which means stop telling, and learn how to lead, which means start asking. You'll have a lot more rewarding practice, and everyone who works with you will be taking charge like you always wanted them to. So we have to ask the obvious question, why do we still manage people when it's so dehumanizing? Why do we tell people what to do? Why are we so addicted to management? There's a ton of reasons, but Bill Gore, love what he said, the founder of W.L. Gore, makers of Gore-Tex. It's a $3 billion, 10,000 person company, and he said it really well. We like traditional hierarchy because it's easy. Here's exactly what he said, quote unquote, "The simplicity and order of an authoritarian organization make it an almost irresistible temptation. It's just easier to say because I told you so. That's why, because I went to dental school and you didn't." But let's finish his quote. So he says, the simplicity and order of an authoritarian organization make it an almost irresistible temptation. Then he says, "Yet it is counter to the principles of individual freedom and smothers the creative growth of man." What did we say makes us human besides being aware? Creativity. An authoritarian organization is counter to the principles of individual freedom and smothers the creative growth of man. It may be easier in the short run, but it is much worse in the long run. It's just easier to tell people what to do. I get it. Instead of training them to make decisions, bringing them along as full-fledged adult stakeholders, we just tell them what to do. But actually, it's only easier in the short run. Again, Erica of the Spodak Dental Group would tell you it's much easier to lead 55 people once you've got them making decisions like adults than it ever was to try to manage them. She speaks at our GOT Summits. If you want to hear her talk and get some time with Erica to find out how to turn your practice manager into a practice leader, she speaks regularly at all our GOT Dental Summits for dentists and their teams. So sign up for the next one and learn how to build a participation-age dental practice. Okay, let's rehumanize our practice. Let's turn our office managers into office leaders and give everybody their brain back. Bill Gore built his $3 billion, 10,000 person organization without a single manager. No one person can hire, no one person can fire, and everyone lives on a network of teams released to take action. And they've been operating this way for almost 70 years. I can give you dozens of other large examples and thousands of smaller ones where companies are racing to embrace the participation age, replace managers with leaders, and rehumanize the workplace by giving everybody their brain back. And I can show them to you at every size in every industry, including dentistry. If they can do it, so can you. Let's turn our office managers into office leaders and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. If this podcast was helpful, please subscribe by computer or by phone, or connect with us at www.gotsummit.com, 2 T's, G-O-T-T summit.com. That stands for Get Off the Treadmill. We have those summits quarterly for dental practitioners only. Or connect with us at www.chuckblakeman.com or email us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Let's get off that treadmill. Let's get into the participation age. I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks.